They say a whiskey epiphany is a moment of sudden realisation. I don't know if you think that that's valid in whiskey, but it makes a lot of sense for me. Hello, whiskey folk. Welcome to another Thursday. Welcome to another vPub. I was caught out there. It wasn't supposed to be me that went live. Getting a bit, I don't know, a wee bit sloppy perhaps, taking things a bit too casually. Anyway, it's great to see you all. It's wonderful to welcome you all into another Thursday vPub. Interestingly, there's no kind of big ticket industry guest tonight. Instead, the guests are kind of more in the form of you guys, stories from you guys, all kind of revolving around a subject that I really like to talk about. Of course, I like to talk about whiskies. I like to talk about special whiskies that we've had really positive experiences with. But if we talk about what I like to term as epiphany moments with whiskey, we're talking about more than just a whiskey and a whiskey recommendation. We're speaking about a story. We're speaking about something that you're never going to forget. And you remember the place, you remember the environment, you remember the people that you were with. Of course, you remember probably the whiskey too. But those are the kind of stories that I was trying to tease out in advance of tonight's vPub. And I reached out to people on social media. I reached out to my patrons and asked kind of for some epiphany stories from anybody that was willing to share. And I got loads and loads and loads in. Thank you so much for everybody that messaged, everybody that emailed, everybody that left comments. I'm going to share quite a few tonight, honestly. I'm going to just do something completely different and read some of these stories to you and share them. Some of them are really short, just a couple of sentences. Other ones are a bit more interesting and fun to read, and I want to share them with you a wee bit later. But it'd be interesting to see what you think about epiphanies and if it's a valid thing in whiskey. I'm very much sure that you agree with me, especially if you're here hanging out in this environment with me. But it's fantastic to welcome you all here. I'm going to talk to you a wee bit about the vPub and the plans for the future in a little while. And I'm going to talk to you about how I see the kind of tonight's live stream shaping up after I've dropped in and welcomed some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. Fantastic to see you all. Let's rewind a wee bit. Oops, there's a dram coming already from Zach Andrews. You star out in Texas. Can we all wish Sunday evening Scotch? You're kidding, it's his birthday. A happy birthday. Have a great day, Michael. Wonderful, Zach. Thank you so much for your dram. And thank you so much for telling me it was Michael Porter's birthday, or reminding me. I think I did in social media wish him happy birthday, but it didn't feel like it was today. It feels like it was yesterday. Anyway, to Michael Porter, Sunday Evening Scotch on social media and Instagram especially. Many happy returns, my friend. Happy birthday, Michael. Cheers. Hope you're having a great day. I don't know if you're in with us tonight, but if you're not, Michael, I know that you picked this up on the replay, so many of you do, and I'm always very, very grateful. McCann Fine and Rare is shouting, Roy, wonderful to see you, Doc. Great to see you, my friend. Thank you for the package that arrived this week, full of goodies that I was supposed to come to Germany and collect. Obviously, current conditions put paid to that. I was very glad to receive your package. Thank you. Andy C is here saying hi, Roy. Good to see you, Andy. Billy Saunders is here. Wonderful to welcome you back again, Billy, from Nottingham. One of the Nottingham Whiskey crew. Mark is here. Great way to end a work day here in the USA. Mark, I don't know if that's a new name. I know there's a couple of Marks with that spelling that follow the show. It's nice to welcome you here. I'm glad you're enjoying your Sunday ahead of your working week. Radek is here. Good to see you, Radek. Always a pleasure to welcome you in, as is Tim Donner Pass Whiskey, Bill Balistreri, Graham Horner, Hoyt Hemphill, Greg's Whiskey Guide, Mark Goins, Kevin Grant on Whiskey. Kevin, those samples that you brought me earlier this week, I'm going to talk about those in a wee bit later, actually, because they were wonderful, wonderful whiskies. I mean, he brought a 1972 Glen Grant, just a sample. He brought a 1989, what was it, 1989 Bemore, I think, a 1982 Kalila, a 1976 Ben Rinnes. There's still a couple of them sitting over my shoulder there to finish off. The 1972 Glen Grant, I put in a wee 3CL sample and sent it across to Kilted Moose, Scott Monroe, because he's not tried a malt whiskey from his birth year yet. So that's in the post to Scott. Scott should get it in the next couple of days. But wonderful, wonderful, really, really special treat whiskies to try. But Epiphany whiskies are different. Epiphany whiskies are more than just a really nice, really special whiskey. An Epiphany whiskey is something that makes you stop and pause and take in the dram, take in the moment, take in what's happened. All whiskies are capable of doing that, not just the really expensive, rare, high-end stuff. Any whiskey is capable of doing that. Ephead is Rolf is here. Gino, Gregor McQuee, Jimmy Legg, good to see you. Blair, Desi Vleeland, always a pleasure. Desi, Dan Levy is in. Good evening, Roy. Good evening, Dan. Welcome, my friend. Flying Hussar 303. Good evening. That's a magic name. Flying Hussar. Nice to have you, my friend. Daniel Vermaas from Hungary. Wonderful stuff. Graham Fraser, Drew from Arizona. Graham Young, Whiskey Novice Jim over Northern Ireland. Wonderful. Gavin saying hi, Roy. Gavin. I wonder if that's the Gavin that's finally managed to catch us in the chat. Gavin, it's great to welcome you here. I hope you're doing well, and it's good to see that you're in the chat. Everybody welcome Gavin. He's been struggling on how to get in the chat for quite a wee while, but he was watching from the Facebook side. Welcome Gavin into the YouTube side of things. And Michael is here, and he is joining us tonight. Michael, I hope you've got something nice in a glass to celebrate your special day. Shane Lay is here. Kresimir Jelcic, Andrew Piers. Andrew, is that a new name? Good to welcome you, my friend, if it is. Fantastic to see you here. Marcus Kreitner, I think I've already mentioned Marcus, but it's always nice to give you a second shout so I can remind myself to welcome in Christina as well. P-Head, Frank, good to have you, my friend. Stewie Baby is in. Philip from France. Oh, sorry, from Switzerland. Erwin Laranaga, good to have you, Erwin, again. Whiskey Stream 5, that's Tony over in Finland, I think. Apologies, I've made a mistake there. I'm sure I'm pretty right. Malt Minion, that's Chuck from the States. Good to have you, Chuck. Gixer Skipper Luke. Wonderful to have so many of you. And Kresimir is saying, evening, Roy. Luna Aaron saying, Roy, I have a request concerning another whiskey channel. Mariki Spitzer on Irish whiskey was seriously misogynistically trolled. Could you mention to give her some likes? Why don't you drop in the link, Luna, into the chat, and I'll ask the admin guys to clear the link to make sure that it's okay. And anybody that's interested in connecting and giving some support over there. So if she's misogynistically trolled, that's worse than just regular trolling, I would have to say. So yes, I would be happy to support anybody who's struggling, especially in the whiskey community. It's something we don't get a lot of, and I would like to stamp out all these wee trolley fires as they arrive, if we at all can. I think the whiskey community is one of the best communities, if not the best community I've ever happened across in my life. I'm very fortunate to have a positive community around this channel, and I wish that for all the whiskey channels, honestly. That's not cool. Philip is saying, looking forward to epiphanies and the stories you will mention. Let's see how many whiskies are traceable and affordable, Roy. Tony is saying, you remember right, Roy. Fantastic, Tony. Thanks so much. Vicky Thompson is here saying, evening, Aquaviti and Barflies. Budget Drams is here. Good to have you, my friend. Rico Denert. Hi, Roy. Nice to see you. It's always nice to see you too, Rico. I just want to cover something I've been discussing recently with patrons, and that is how to cover the vPubs in the schedule going forward. Of course, when everybody was locked down at home, I brought out some Sunday evening vPubs, the extended opening vPubs, just because I knew that I was going to be stuck here, and so many of you were going to be stuck too. These were not charged to patrons. It was completely free content. It was just me putting out extra content, and it was really good. A lot of people fed back that they seemed to enjoy a different element of the Sunday night pubs because it was more focused on the community and less focused on me having a interview style format with somebody from the industry like a guest. I'm kicking over my Epiphany whiskies at my feet here. So it was good to have that feedback, and it kind of spawned other things like is it a Speyside game and things like that. So things that may endure over time. But honestly, there's a couple of reasons that I don't want to keep the twice a week vPubs, and that is I always want to be mindful of the content. And I think if it's coming out weekly, it's easier for me to come up with concepts and themes and things that are more valuable, honestly, and more interesting to tune into, I think. I was tearing through a lot of the content and a lot of the ideas over recent weeks. And the little list of suggestions and themes for vPubs has gone a bit thin. So that's one reason. But far more important reason is to kind of keep, with all the content that's coming out there, there's so many channels out there, there's so much live streams and virtual tastings and virtual meetings and Zoom club meetings. And we have to be mindful of our consumption of content and of alcohol. And I think now it's getting to the point that I need to kind of change and cut back on the content a little bit. There's a lot of feedback I got to suggest that people were really enjoying the extra content, but they can understand why. And it's not really about, it was easy for me to do 2 lives a week, honestly. I wasn't doing anything else in the evening anyway, let's be honest. I was in lockdown the same as you guys. But I think now it's kind of time to shape up things a wee bit and work out how we're going to go forward. Huge amounts of feedback from patrons. Absolutely loved the feedback. I loved your candidness, your honesty, your openness about it all, what you would really like and what you thought was maybe appropriate. A lot of you were really quite measured. And some of you just flat came out and told me exactly what you preferred. Whiskey malt content is here, or malt content. Hi Roy, a wee dram, my friend Slancha, by the way, I've posted some samples for you today. That's from Vlad. Fantastic, Vlad. Despite your name, I know you're in the UK, my friend. It's wonderful to have a wee dram from you, and it's wonderful to welcome you in again. I look forward to getting your samples, Vlad. Slancha. This is a beautiful whiskey. Jimmy Leg Blair is saying, you cut back, I get sad. Don't worry, Jimmy. Here's my idea. I was putting out 2 vPubs a month. Every other week is the way the vPubs were working. Circumstances around me has changed enough that I'm able to bring a weekly vPub now. You guys have been happy to support it. You've got behind it. In fact, you've got behind 2 vPubs a week, so it's going to go to 1 a week. The Thursday vPub, the way that it's always been for 3 years now, or coming up for 3 years anyway, that'll remain. Sunday nights will be ad hoc, let's say. If there's something that we have got some nice content, if there's a guest that's not available on our Thursday, let's say, if there's something worthy, maybe 1 a month type pattern, we'll still bring along these Sunday extended opening. But it'll be very much demand based. So I hope that makes a bit of sense. And what that also does is it frees up that magical Sunday evening that I used to prefer, choosing to do patron only vPubs. That's the lock-in sessions that I used to do every month for patrons, and they've been starved a little bit. And during lockdown, they've actually only they had 1 in early March, missed April altogether. I managed to do 1 in May, and that was a lot of fun. So I'm going to be able to bring that back again and make a regular thing out of it. So it's not all bad news. And what it means is that instead of having the pressure to try and bring guests every week on a Thursday, I can relax a bit and move back to 1 or 2 a month and mix it up a bit and have regular Thursday vPubs that's all about the community too. And everybody will know well in advance what the content's going to be because I advertise it through Patreon, first, of course, through social media channels, and obviously through the YouTube channel itself. So that's how it's going to work going forward. Hope that makes sense to everybody, but I'm happy to hear your feedback as well. Karen Hughes is in. Wonderful, Karen. It was great to have you on Sunday night as well. Lee J. Brown is also here. Lee J, there's a package on its way to you, my friend. Thanks for your patience waiting on that. Actually, is it Lee J. Brown or is it Lee Kerwin? Perhaps it's Lee Kerwin. I'm feeling bad. I think it's Lee Kerwin that I shipped it to today. Bud Jenkins is saying, thank you again for all you've been doing, for all the wonderful content over this time. You've helped us through your generous efforts. Thank you so much, Bud. And I very much appreciate the feedback and the comments I got from you today as well. Wonderful stuff. I think it's shown me that a weekly vPub is more appropriate than kind of twice a month. And people are they seem to think that you need to keep up with vPubs, you need to tune into every one, you'll miss out. But it's not like a series, it's not like a serial. It's just, there's nothing will be shared in many vPubs that are, it's not going to be shared again in the future, honestly. Don't feel that. I mean, the vPub is a live thing. If you want to watch it in replay, fantastic. But it's really supposed to fit around your life. So if your lifestyle is appropriate, if the mood suits you, then by all means tune in. But it's never a requirement. It's never a duty. You never ever feel like that. It's only supposed to be fun. And I'd rather have somebody here for the long term rather than somebody kind of fastidiously trying to keep up and finding that a bit of a struggle. So yes, Sunday night coming. There will probably be Sunday night coming a couple of nights from now. Will be a lock-in, a patron-only lock-in. And then from then on in, it's just going to be an occasional once or twice a month on a Sunday night. If anybody's got any feedback, please ask me directly. Ask me in the comments, ask me through email, whisky@aquavitae.com, or however you normally communicate with me. Bill Monteith is saying, came up on this channel during lockdown, and it is a lifesaver for my whiskey journey. Never felt like I had to hit them all. Fantastic, Bill. Exactly the point. Che is saying, definitely been great having some more content over the weekend to watch while stuck at home, Aquavitae, but also the community aspect adds to it. Absolutely. I know that people are kind of keen to say, Roy, where is your pre-recorded content? And I still struggle to do that because it's really difficult to edit when you're home teaching and their kids are all around, but it's impossible to record. You need a quiet environment, you need to focus, you need to set things up and take sections of the house that shouldn't really have cameras and things set up and lights, and so it's been difficult while the kids have been here, but I will get back to that again. It's always going to be a part of the channel, but it'll always be kind of sporadic content. The lifeblood of the channel has been the vPubs, the live streams, and that is what's responsible for building the community. Honestly, I think most people would tend to agree with that. Pre-recorded content builds a following for sure. But the community is built around this, the interactivity. Andrew Butler is saying, I've been alternating between live and catch up, and I'm still working full time. Hello, minus commute. Thanks so much, Andrew. I really appreciate it. And it is, when it's 2 hours at a time, it's kind of a lot for to ask somebody to catch up on or to keep up on. So I will never ask that. Whiskey obviously saying, just right, Roy, we're behind you, whatever you plan. Thanks for everything you've brought us. Thank you very much, Jim. My friend and peer creator, Whiskey Novice channel over in Northern Ireland. Donna Pasca saying, any plans to have someone from Waterford Distillery on as a guest? Very interested in what's happening there. Well, what's happened is I went over and spent a day speaking to, I was just, it was like a hurricane download scenario with Mark Rainey over in Edinburgh, because the vPub goes out really quite late for Mark to join. But as time went on and I started to understand some of the characters and the people at Waterford, there's lots of people that could come on to the vPub and we could talk about the Waterford products on a vPub. Lots of people have been asking about it. So it's different from me reaching out to a brand and coming on to tell what they're doing and looking like there's something being sold. That will never be a dynamic in this content. It will never be that. But in order to get insight and information, and knowledge, honestly, from brands and producers and things, then that's the best way to do it, to invite them on so that they can share what they're talking about. And while they do that, they talk about what makes them unique, what they're doing that's perhaps a wee bit different. But every single guest I'll have on will have something different to share, a new piece of insight, a new piece of curious information that curious whiskey folk, knowledgeable whiskey folk, like you guys will no doubt devour. I would be interested to have Waterford on. I'm sure it can happen. I'm convinced it can happen. I've got some nice samples actually here still from Waterford. Mark Slinger is saying, have you tried Glen Murray Madeira cask since last week? I have. I find it to be a very pleasant dram. I would have to say the 18-year-old is a bit more cloying, a bit more sweet. It's a bit heavier on the palate. But the Madeira cask, bizarrely, considering the 18-year-old is bourbon cask, the Madeira cask you would imagine is syrupy and cloying, but it's not. It's quite unique. It's a different take. It's not what you would expect from that type of cask. And I would describe it as really quite nice and moreish. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it more than I expected I would, honestly speaking. Philip is saying, Roy, I'm very glad I came out of the shadows in this period where, due to the situation, we had intense vPub interaction. It's a blessing. Fantastic, Philip. Thank you so much. Well, I reached out to people because I wanted to talk about this concept about whiskey epiphanies. And if I go back, my whiskey journey is shaped by these epiphany moments. There was obviously that first whiskey, that gateway whiskey that brought me in, Glengoyne 10. And I've talked about that story many, many times on the vPub in the past. And I've talked about how I went through my whiskey journey back in the beginning. It was very casual and just kind of not really studying it, but just buying and enjoying and not really getting under the skin of whiskey. And it was that moment in 2009 on a sea loch in the west of Scotland with my brother fishing that we encountered Lagavulin 16, or it was that trip that day, and I remember it vividly that day. And that moment, that day in August 2009, changed everything that I would do from then on in terms of hobbies and pursuits and things. And it came at a good time because my girls were born the year before. So 2009, you know, I wasn't playing sports anymore. I wasn't getting out to play golf and things. I just wasn't getting out, honestly. And so whiskey kind of comes to you and fits around your life. And then from there on in, it's just been epiphany after epiphany after epiphany. And then if you go back to, we first moved into this house and it wasn't big enough. We always bought this house with a view to extend it. It wasn't big enough for when my son was born, and we had to extend. We moved out, and while I was out, but for some reason that winter, I started to explore and study whiskies and read about whiskies and things. I remember being in the other house and spending far more on whiskey than I'd ever spent in the past. Then we moved back into this house and the girls started school. And a bizarre thing happened. Now, I draw on a lot of religious themes in this channel if I talk about whiskey evangelism and I talk about the word epiphany. It's got quite a religious connotation, hasn't it? And I don't think that that's without SoCal Dram Tram have just bought me a dram as well, saying being able to catch every vPub would be amazing, but alas, we miss a few. But when we catch them, the best part is the community. Cheers to everybody. Thank you, Matt and Caesar down in Southern California. Thank you so much for your dram, boys. Those guys are putting out video content on YouTube as well, sharing whiskey, the two of them. And there's no, I think there is a bit of a reason for that, because I'm a lapsed Catholic. I was brought up a Catholic, and really, it doesn't really feature in my life. Any kind of religion now, honestly. It's just where I ended up, I guess. So anybody that's got any intelligence about the socio-political, religious, sometimes religious, intolerant society that we can live in, and certain areas of the United Kingdom, honestly, but certainly it used to be prevalent, much more prevalent in the west of Scotland, will know that, you know, the oil to Catholics' vinegar, let's say, is Protestant, or the Church of Scotland, basically. And my friend in whiskey became a Church of Scotland minister, Graham, the Whisky Dev. You know him as the Whisky Dev. He's been on a vPub before. There was a casual ad hoc night that we did at one New Year, just the two of us together. And from around 2012, 2013, until he moved up into the Highlands, up into Speyside, over those 4 or 5 years, the whiskey epiphanies were coming thick and fast, because it was like a whiskey arms race. I've talked about it being like an arms race before, and where I would be buying 3 or 4 or 5 new bottles of whiskey, the Rev was much more canny, and he was buying maybe 1. So he's probably responsible for more whiskey epiphanies because of the whiskies that he was picking out, whereas I was trying to cover as much ground as I possibly could. And I spent a lot of time with the Whisky Dev, and I've asked him to come on a bit later. He's got things on tonight, but he's going to come on a bit later after I've shared the stories, your stories, so that you can hear some of our whiskey epiphanies and the Rev's take on it as well. And if in time, when he moved up to the Highlands, he went off and he worked for Macallan for a while, he's back in the church now. He's got a charge up in the Highlands, up in Speyside now. But he's going to come on a wee bit later tonight, and I'm looking forward to welcoming my whiskey friend, the Whisky Dev, a wee bit later. Matthias is in. Good to see you, Matthias. It's always wonderful to have you and see your wee icon there. He's saying, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Roy. Wonderful stuff. Jimmy Legg is saying, I was married in a Catholic church in 1992. They haven't seen me since, and I don't think I've been missed. Yeah, I don't think anybody's missing me in the church either. As my childhood, I think it was fairly positive experience, honestly, on the most part. But it doesn't feature now, I guess. Lindsay Holman is saying, I spent 12 years in Catholic schools. The nuns were brutal. Haven't been back since. I did have a couple of nuns at high school, but they were very sweet and they were very nice nuns, I have to say. But I hear that in the past, especially, I think that's been a difficult thing. Everwind is saying, my first Scotch whisky epiphany was learning not all Scotch tasted like a raging fire and ashtray. There's so much of that theme running through some of the stories. And McCallum Finer is saying, same story here. I was brought up a Franciscan Grey Friar school. Now I'm a hardcore atheist. Daniel Gray saying, that's really interesting. What would you recommend then? Covering ground and getting exposed to more styles, or buying selectively but considerably less? No, I would suggest that you choose one of those roles, Daniel, and then find a close friend who's willing to take up the other role, and you work it that way, because it seemed to work quite well for Graham and I. Tony Evans is saying, the Whisky Rev, also known as the Stig, fantastic. Yeah, you know what? For a long time when I talked about him, because his birthday just happens to be out of pure coincidence, the exact same day as me, and there were lots of kind of photographs that were taken from different angles of the same scene on two different social media accounts, one from the Whisky Rev and one from my accounts. And the suspicion went up way back in the early days of the channel that the Whisky Rev and I were actually the same people, which was kind of fun, and I was kind of interested to try and keep that going as long as I could. But no, we fessed up. Mark Slinger is saying, 2 Epiphany Whiskies well sat with the Rev. We're at the Glasgow gathering. Iron Root dram was stunning. That was Iron Root Hubris, the straight corn whiskey, amazing. But the Klein Leash instantly stopped me in my tracks and became my #1 dram. I think, yes, it's difficult now, because when the Rev and I first bought that, it was £90. And I don't want to admit what I paid for my last bottle of that, but I've got one left. I've had one gifted to me over time. I've bought 3, 4, 5. I don't know. The Rev's bought 1 or 2 more. We've gone through a lot of that specific cask, but it's way up into the hundreds now to get hold of it, unfortunately. But I remember Roddy saying to me after the Epiphany tasting, because there was a wee drop left in the bottle and we left it for those guys to try any of the whiskies that any of the Epiphany whiskies that we were sharing. That's when the Scotch Test Dummies were over. And Roddy tried the Klein Leash and he admitted to me that he shed a little tear as he sipped the very last drop of it. So it's nice to know that other folk get out of that. The Whisky Rev is in. Wonderful to see you here. I'm looking forward to welcome you in a wee bit, my friend. I think that'll be fun. Welsh Toro is here. Good to see you, Welsh. Completely understand. I think the lockdown has made us all refocus. Aye. Lee J is saying, I've enjoyed many whiskies in my short journey, but none I think I can say it was an Epiphany whiskey for me, but I'll keep searching. Lol. Lee J, it's going to hit you one day. Take a trip, go somewhere, sit. It's got so much to do with the environment. Absolutely. It's got a lot to do with the company, but sometimes they can just be sitting on the couch, honestly. Whisky Novice has bought me a dram said, Roy, cheers to all. We'll see you in the rerun. Jim, if you're leaving us tonight, you need to watch this in the rerun, because there's a lot of cool stories. Slant you, my friend. My hand friend Rayla Doc is saying that we should also talk about anti-epiphanies. My most memorable one was a posh Jim Beam tasting at Interwhiskey in 2017. Aye, we can certainly have those. That might be a topic for a future vPub doc. But you can't. It's hard to evangelise if you're going to pick negative themes, right? Let me read this to you, because I absolutely love it. This is a different thing for me to do tonight, obviously, to be reading to you. I'm going to do my very best. I'm not the best. I'm not the best at this, but I'll give it a go, and I hope you can follow along and enjoy it a wee bit. But see what you think of this story to start us off. Back in 1996, I was living with my girlfriend in Freiburg. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. A beautiful city south of the Black Forest. One fine day, we went to an Irish pub together, and there was one of those chalkboards, and it read, "Drink of the Day, Lagavulin 16, with a long description of what it tasted like underneath. I was curious. How can a drink taste like all of this? So I ordered it. My only whiskey experience at this point was the usual trinity of Jim, Jack, and Johnny, but I kind of liked it, or better said, I wasn't put off by it. Well, the Lagavulin arrived, and we immediately noticed the smell. We sniffed the glass like a curious little puppies. We were fascinated. What the hell is this? We tried it, and we were shocked. I can still recall what it tasted like to me: campfire and orange jam. Smoky, sweet, and a bit sour. Strangely, it was the orange note that struck with me, and I'm still looking for it in Lagavulin 16, but struggle to find it. Little did I know that in this moment I had found another love, one that would probably last a lifetime. You see, the funny thing was that my girlfriend was even more intrigued than I was. All the way home, she was talking about how much she liked it. So I bought her a bottle for her next birthday. It was 50 Deutschmarks at the time, roughly €25 in today's money, and a lot of money for a student. The next day, I had to leave for work for a few days, and when I came back, I found the bottle empty. I mean empty, as in not a single drop left. I asked her about it, and her answer still makes me laugh. I'm so sorry. I love it so much, I could brush my teeth with it. Happily married ever after? Oh yes, with whiskey. And that is from Stefan Novak. Absolutely loved that story, not just because it was Lagavulin 16, but just because of obviously the fact that he found two loves to pursue for the rest of his life. Wonderful stuff. He goes on to mention some honourable mentions in the shape of an Ardbeg 1975, Balcones Bladnock 26-year-old, and various other whiskies, and apologise for the long post. Stefan, it was a wonderful post. Don't apologise for it. But I need to read what he said about the Ardbeg 1975. It was at a whiskey fair, and I seriously considered to grab the bottle and run. I've been at the Old and Rare, and I've sipped at the Old and Rare, and I've had the exact same feeling, Stefan. Absolutely wonderful stuff. Thanks so much for sharing with us. On Patreon, I also had one coming in from... I've had lots coming in from Patreon. I've had them coming in from Facebook and Twitter and email and everything as well. But my epiphany came when I tried a single grain Japanese whiskey, the Cheetah, straight after Tesco's own blend of a 3-year-old Scotch. I always thought that all whiskey tasted pretty much like the cheap blend and was only palatable mixed with something. How wrong was I? And that's where my whiskey journey began. And that was from Toby Field. I know the Cheetah that you're talking about, Toby, but interestingly, I've still got my bottle sealed. I've never actually opened that. Although I did, I'm sure that we did try it on a whiskey club night. So I've kind of got a vague idea what it tastes like. But thanks to that Cheetah, Toby, right? Also from Patreon, the whiskey that changed it for me was the Benromic 10. I don't know what I was expecting, but it was the first time I found a lot of complexity and nuance in a whiskey that it just blew my mind, and I have been hooked ever since. This is where I came to seek out a community of like-minded people. I had just stumbled across this whiskey and wasn't sure how to find similar experiences, although there was an unforeseen byproduct of this that I didn't account for, that I feel myself becoming closer to individuals, not just the whiskey. That's from Alan McLaughlin. Alan, I cannot tell you how much that resonated with me. It's absolutely what I am grateful for about whiskey more than anything. Yes, I love the quiet moments. I love being able to just sit on the couch and just enjoy a dram and kind of wind down and relax with it and taste, analyse and then relax and drift away and whatever. I love all of that. But there's nothing better than when you can get together with other folk and share the experience for no other reason than to reassure yourself that you're not crazy, right? That all these things do exist in that we measure, that we pour. Stefan Novak is in tonight. Good to see you, Stefan. He's saying thank you. Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying, yep, Aquavita. I had my first Lagavulin in the USA a long time ago with a group of friends in Philadelphia with a fireplace to echo this delicious smoke. But if Epiphany means Satori, Satori equals first Port Ellen. Okay, so that's you just speaking about the first moment was your first ever Port Ellen. That's a shame, Greg, because that's a difficult club to be a member of these days, isn't it, Port Ellen? Daniel Vermaas tip: always hide a spare bottle of Lagavulin. It's kind of funny. Lagavulin 16 is the one whiskey that I will not let my house be without Daniel, honestly. I forgive it its presentation. I forgive it its 43%, its colour, it's changing over the years. I forgive it a lot. Andrew Butler is saying, I've had some epiphanies myself, but the best one was when I gave some of my birthday dram to Ben, a Dram a Day Boers, and he reviewed it on YouTube. Blind sample number 2. I think that's super interesting. I wonder if Ben Boers is still going. I remember I used to watch him back about, I don't know, 2016, 2017 when he was doing that charity thing. And he was literally testing and reviewing a whiskey every single day for a year to raise money for charity. Amazing. George O'Brien is saying, good to see George. My epiphany moment was the Lagavulin 16 after my dad's funeral. It's a sad time, George. I hope it helped you in some way. And it's amazing how many people connect with that whiskey. Amazing. Honestly, not just Lagavulin 16, but any kind of peated, strong, boldly flavoured whiskey. Falscraft is saying, I still have no idea what whiskey it was, but it must have been in Islay in 1997. It tasted like seaweed and really salty. Never found it again. And now you're probably chasing that forevermore. Matthias is saying, my first epiphany was Glengoyne 12. My second, I guess, Highland Park Arcadia in 1971. Wow, 1971 Highland Park. That stuff is so tasty and so expensive. Absolutely, Matthias. Absolutely. Dora Pass Whiskey Tim is saying, agreed. Once I fell for Whiskey YouTube was a place I found a community of people to share it with. It's amazing. It's fantastic. And you know what's really fantastic is when we take it out of the virtual realm and we get the chance, okay, not in recent weeks, to meet up in real life. And it's really, really life affirming. It's such a positive thing. Daniel Gray is saying, I had an epiphany night in Tokyo, more than a single whiskey, but the last whiskey was a $1.15, 80s bottling of all things. It was amazing. And collectively opened my eyes. Greg's Whiskey Guide is talking about Port Ellen, saying, I know Aquavita, but it's my favourite distillery, and still, after 36 different versions tried, the only ones I had home, I most often enjoyed them only with my best friends. Yeah, absolutely. Sunday Evening Scotch Michael was saying his first epiphany was a Macallan 18 dinner with my boss, and he bought a round for all. Neat, of course. I thought I'll get this down, but I was blown away. It started a whole journey for me. I think we've all got somebody to thank for our whiskey journey. Somebody that kind of shone a torchlight for us, that reached out a hand and kind of led the way or opened the door. We've all got one. And for me, it's Luca, a guy who I worked with for 20 odd years over in Italy. He's a guy from Rome, came over to Scotland. He came here to show me the way. And I've shared the story many, many times before, but we've all got those folk. Bragan writes, my first bought single malt was Port Ellen. I think you've told me that before, Welsh. Gordon MacPhail, I drank it for years. It's been 18 years since I had a drop. It's just too expensive now. Steve Anderson is saying, Kintaruban. You've got something in common with somebody else tonight, Steve. I'd been an Irish bourbon drinker for years, but couldn't handle Scotch until a couple of summers ago. A friend that I knew who loved port, gave me a sip. He knew I loved port, gave me a sip of his Kintaruban. Again, that friend, that connection that you've made, somebody that was able to reach out and get you to connect a wee bit more. I'm going to read this this other wee story to you from one of our other friends and well-known friends in the community. And he's saying, my epiphany came nope. Let me get the right one. He actually is likening it to Saul on the road to Damascus. So he's drawing on religious themes as well. It was 11th of September, 2014. He's saying, we had driven all the way from Glasgow to Goodwood on the south coast of England. We were there for the Goodwood revival. Old cars and planes, a picture containing outdoor men, boats and trucks. Let me show you this image, if I can show you here too. And I don't know if you recognise who's that standing on the left-hand side. It looks a wee bit like a certain YouTube reviewer, but it's not. That's our friend, Precarious Dave, and that's the scene he's talking about. He goes on to say, finally, with the tent set up, we had a wee dram together. The arrangement was that each of us had brought a bottle. I'd brought a full bottle of Dura Origin, Neil a half-empty, disappointing Glenlivet 12-year-old, and David had brought an almost done Fettercairn Fask. What astonished us all was what a day's travel in a warm car could do to that Glenlivet. It was memorably orange and sweet and sherried. It was complexity and nuance. I think that trip converted us into proper whiskey drinkers, and I think it was the first time I photographed the lineup as being an important part of the trip. And there it is, maybe a Precarious Dave's first ever whiskey image from 2014, a Dura Origin, a Glenlivet 12 and a Fettercairn Fask. And he goes on to say that he doubts that the selection would cut the mustard now, but he remembers that Glenlivet. So it's like I say, it doesn't need to be a particularly spectacular whiskey. It doesn't need to be that just to bring you in and to get you thinking about whiskey in a way that you have never previously. I think that's a super interesting story. It can be anything. It can be that cheetah. That cheetah that Toby was talking about is a very inexpensive thing. Here's another one from a patron who said, my Epiphany dram was way back when I was given a Lafroig 10, introduced to me by an ex-RAF colleague of Andy's. My main tipple at the time was Cinzano and lemonade, with the occasional southern comfort. From that first mouthful of that smoky, peated wonder, I was hooked, and I wondered why I'd never explored whiskey before. It was the same colleague that also introduced Andy to his beloved Bunnahabhain 12-year-old, still one of his favourite drams to this day. He too is somewhat of a returning visitor to the wonderful world of whiskey, having had his love of whiskey rekindled by a trip to the Lakes Distillery. A relatively recent convert to the peated drams, something he recently had another epiphany moment with was the fabulous Leitchik 10-year-old. Definitely one of those sit back in your chair, eyes glazing over moments, and how another firm favourite and now another firm favourite in our collection. And that's obviously from Helen Widdowson, Helen and Andy down in Milton Keynes. Interesting that Andy's firmly in the lap of the Stell there with Bunnahabhain and Leitchik, but they're both fantastic whiskies. And again, interesting how it's a really peaty, powerful, bold, hook type style whiskey in a Lafroig 10 that managed to get a Helen converted. Another good one here, this one came in from Facebook. He's saying, I must have been about 30 when I walked into a liquor store. I'm 52 now. Struggling to better understand the various categories of whiskies, foreign and domestic, I asked a salesman to sell me an extreme example of Scotch single malt. It turned out to be a Bowmore 12, $25 at the time, which I had never heard of. I'd never tasted a heavily peated whiskey prior to this, so my senses were overloaded and my curiosity was turned up to 11 upon this first encounter with the spirit. I remember being in my kitchen and I remember it was late afternoon, possibly midweek, pouring it into a rocks glass with ice. I was young and I've been trapped down this rabbit hole ever since. I've had several other very memorable moments with whiskey along this journey, most recently a 19-year-old Bunrinnes from Robert Graham a few years back, but none as important as that first Bowmore in my kitchen. And that's from Chris Malloy. Chris, great story. And again, that peated whiskey, that's the hook flavours that brought you in as well. Super interesting. This is from Bert Smedley on Twitter. Bert is saying, Talisker 10, the map label in modern parlance, tasted at the distillery in April 1994. Nothing like today's by comparison, £20 or £15 at Sainsbury's, 2 classic malts for £30 and Xmas, Christmas 1994. Wow. How we wish we could take a quick trip back to those days. Wouldn't it be amazing, the things that you would pick up? Neil Cochran is saying, Precarious, he's talking to his friend Precarious Dave. That was Neil in the blue overalls you saw there. That seems just like yesterday, I can imagine. Kim Bryant is saying, evening Roy, sipping on a Big Pete 2009 Christmas edition. My epiphany was in the 90s with a double matured Talisker. So that's the special edition Talisker. Back in the 1990s, similar to Bert on Twitter, who also had that epiphany with a Talisker back in the day as well. Menno was saying, when I turned 21, my father bought me a bottle of Laffy 10. Is that Laddie 10? Both of us only familiar with Fiddick 12 and JW Black. Opened it, sipped it, both fell silent. We went, wow. Father and son moment. Fantastic, Menno. Superb. And Helen is admitting that Andy is a bit of a Boona fanboy. Fantastic stuff. I'm going to try and get through these, as many as I can. Some of these are really, really cool. I'm going to save that one till the end, because I think that's a nice kind of segue in. So I'm just going to stick that one down at the end. I think it'll be nice. See how many I'm going to try to share with you tonight. I think it'd be good fun. Peter Box is saying, well, at the risk of sounding unimaginative, my epiphany whiskey was Lagavulin 16. I had tried the bottom shelf blends, the Glenlivet 12, Balvenie's Glenfiddich. I never tried peated whiskey. I got the Lagavulin 16. I needed no gradual introduction to peat. I loved it immediately, and I tried all kinds of other peated drams. I write this wearing my Scotch Test Dummies Love the Peat t-shirt. I need to get to Islay. Maybe 2021. Peter, you do need to get to Islay. And if you do manage to get over here, make sure you let me know that you're going to be passing through, my friend. This is from Bobby Purnell on Facebook. He's saying, back in the 80s, Talisker 8 was my first epiphany whiskey. So we're really going back now, an 8-year-old Talisker. It opened my eyes to how complex and nuanced a whiskey could be. To that point, my experience with whiskey had been mostly Jack Daniels in my youth, a rite of passage in small-town Texas, and the Glenlivet that my first post-college graduation boss drank and introduced me to. Nothing wrong with that Scotch. It's a nice little Scotch, but sort of basic, kind of like a Toyota Corolla. But a wise bartender suggested that based on my taste in beer, there's that coach, there's that guiding light coming in here, where I enjoyed rich flavours that I might enjoy something other than Glenlivet. He poured me a glass of Talisker 8, and my love for, or obsession with, Scotch was born. It was like going from black and white to full colour. Wonderful stuff. See if you can guess who this little anecdote's from. It was November 1986. Name of the boy? Well, you have to guess. Name of the city? Halifax, Nova Scotia. Name of the bar? Maxwell's Plum. Name of the bartender? Stu. Name of the whiskey? Macallan 12-year-old. I was a beer man, Guinness mostly, but also liked whiskey. By that I mean Canadian Club. Stu said that if I liked whiskey, I'd love what he was about to give me. It was a Macallan 12-year-old and a cognac snifter. I've been in love ever since. I think we can guess that that's from Blair Conrad, Jimmy Legg. And he's saying, thanks, Stu. I hope when he says he's been in love, he's talking about being in love with the Macallan. Maybe he's still in love with Stu, the bartender, after all those years. And you could understand and forgive him the reason why. The whiskey that came to mind thinking about epiphany whiskies for me would be the Aaron Cote Roti cask finish. It was in pot still with my friend Jamie, and tried that dram, and it was fantastic. I had never experienced those flavours and sensations in whiskey before. The next day after I finished my shift, the first thing I did was go to a local shop and get a bottle. From Che Francis. And over on Twitter, Edredar Caledonia 12-year-old 46% natural colour, unchill filtered, and the first non-supermarket brand I ever tasted. There have been a few since, and have no doubt that others will come. That's from Malcolm Douglas. Dogs Have No Uncles is saying, the first whiskey I tried was a dram of Lefroy 10 my dad gave me when I was a teenager, which unsurprisingly didn't put me off. Which surprisingly, he's saying, didn't put me off. Just as it jumps. Here we are. But the whiskey that made me an enthusiast was Glenfarclas 10. Well, that's in common with somebody else tonight. Willie Dollar is saying, after he's pointing to his Willie Dollar is pointing to Craig Dollar and saying a few can blame Aquavitae, and you take part of the blame. Went for a day at lunch and a tour around a distillery. Transformation from whiskey drinker to trainee whiskey geek. I think you're fully fledged now, Willie. Peter Wilcox is saying, Roy, I thank my wife for my first beautiful dram. Have moved on to many different whiskies now, Deanston, Coquer and Glengoyne, but the lessons and learning, I have your channel to thank. Cheers. Thank you very much, Peter. I'm glad that there's a bit of value here, not just from me, but of course the fantastic people in the lounge every week in the vPub chat. And Donna Past, Tim is saying, the one that put me in the path of malt whiskey was Aberlour Abuna. It was a cast strength bourbon fan, and that one converted me. That's very interesting. It's very interesting. I'm looking forward to an upcoming collaboration with Chad and Sarah again. You remember that when they were on this channel trying to get me to just leading me through a field of bourbons that night, we talked about turning the tables and them having another Scotch session. And I think that would be fun. I think it would be good to do that. Mark Slinger is saying, Roy, take a drink, pal. Thank you, Mark. I'll have a wee drink of water. Multi-mission is saying Laffy. It wasn't Laddie, it was Lafroig. Of course it was. A Laffy. I know it is the Froig. And Whiskey Throttle Daniel saying, I tried a 30-year-old from under the table at a fundraiser called Hopscotch. Still to this day, I don't know what it was, but I was hooked pretty much at that point. A 30-year-old from under the table. And that was over 10 years ago. Nice to see you in, Daniel. Nice to see you in. So you've only been into whiskey for 10 years. Your collection suggests many more years than that. Jimmy Legg is determined that he's still coming in 2020, even if he has to swim. Aye. Be interesting to see how 2020 shapes up for the second half of the year. I'm still not overly optimistic. And Hellswood spotted that was from Jimmy Legg, indeed. And she's saying, I used to call Lafroig leapfrog. Many do. Or the laughing frog. Luke is saying, I'm going to pour myself an Epiphany whiskey to be in the moment. A Balblair 05. Slant your barflies. Well, I'll raise this wee dribble left of this dram and I'm going to pour something else. A wee Texas whiskey. It's sitting here. It's been sitting here for a wee while. I think I used this on the blind I did with Matthew from the Good Spirits Company. This was a bit of an epiphany for me, that things don't have to be Scotch or taste like Scotch to make you stop and stare. And a lot of it, as I've been saying, is about the people that you're with and the environment that you're in. And being over in Texas the last 2 years certainly qualifies for both trips, honestly, epiphanies for me. And just how amazing whiskey people can be. And also the idea of tasting the whiskey in its own environment has a huge weight and value. I know that people talk about it in Scotch all the time. You know, that kind of soaked, rainy, windy environment, or dank, damp, dusty environments, things like that. But over in Texas, the whiskey has a different way of communicating with you through the environment. I'm going to get through the last couple of these and run up to bringing in my guest tonight. He's sitting in the background. Fantastic. He's here. This one comes from Patreon as well. It said, it sounds like my story is similar to others, but of course with a few twists. On my first and so far only trip to Scotland, I began my journey at age 50. Having been a beer guy all my life, I had to work up to straight Guinness via Black and Tans. I happened upon a whiskey shop on the narrow road up to Edinburgh Castle. There, a very patient store owner introduced me to the world of whiskey. I'm sure that something he's done to countless other people over the years. On that day, I found a Cragganmore that I really loved. After drinking several of the 40% usual choices in the following years, single malt Glens, my second big wow moment was my first Glenmorangie 12-year Quinta Ruban. That introduced me to the world of port finishes that later branched into trying sherry bombs. As I am still pretty new in my whiskey trek, I recently had a second wow moment with a Boona 12-year-old. So I'm sure there are still many more moments out there like these, and that's from Drew Lane. So you see kind of patterns here with the peaty stuff. You can see people talking about the finishes. The Quinta Ruban has obviously popped up twice. Sherry bombs are a big deal. So it's getting into that kind of those really bold hook flavors, those moments that the flavors are much more than you perhaps had previously associated with whiskey. Very interesting. This one came in on email. Lagavulin 16, another Lagavulin 16. As a non-whiskey drinker, I visited Skye and came back with Talisker 10, leading to a line of the Diageo classic malts behind the bar, the aura surrounding the stylish, oldest and most expensive of the selection, with a label that looked as if the bottle had rested forgotten in a dark, dank cellar somewhere. Thankfully, the experience lived up to the imagined reputation that I had concocted for it. This started me off on a lengthy peat sojourn, but I needed a good reason to go someplace else. And then he talks about how Springbank 10 took him through various different whiskies with a very Campbelltown flavour. And then eventually it was the Kilkerran 8 that made me involuntarily rock back my head and close my eyes, drug-like and true Ewan McGregor fashion, and marvel at the intensity and taste of flavour. The Springbank 12 cast strength soon followed with similar sensations, and so onwards to the SMWS for more cast strength experiences. I'm patiently waiting, but fingers crossed, it won't be long. That's from Richard Hall. Tremendous stuff, Richard. And I get exactly what you're talking about. One of my epiphanies was when I stepped up from kind of not just drinking, but actually enjoying cast strength whiskies and realizing that the ABV, I was tasting past the ABV, the heat of the alcohol, and actually I was enjoying the extra texture, the extra spice, the extra grip and flavor delivery that ABV was giving me. It was very, very moreish. It was addictive. I remember the first time I ever went to SMWS in Edinburgh and just playing with water, dram after dram, and just absolutely loving it, and buying whiskey, not even caring what distillery it was from, just saying, give me the next malt of the moment or whatever it was, and just having an absolute blast exploring cast strength whiskies. This is an absolute cracker, this story. I love this. Bulveni 12 Doublewood is the whiskey that hooked me and showed me that Scotch wasn't just a stuffy old man's drink. Actually, speaking of epiphanies, I owe you, Roy, hugely for mentioning the walk you took with the Rev on the West Highland Way. Even though I had only had time to go as far as Balmaha, where I chilled for a few days, that walk was one of the best days of my life, period. And it honestly enhanced my connection to whiskey immeasurably, not just the awesome warehouse tour of Glengoyne or the many whiskey booster sips I had to power me along the way, but seeing, smelling and feeling Scotland was transformative. Soaking rain, howling wind, bright sunshine and cool breezes all in just one day. Just like lush green fields, deep woods, bare moorland as far as the eye can see were all in equal measure. 19 miles of epiphany for sure. That was a walk, that very walk from Mulgai to Balmaha via Glengoyne, of course, that I took a couple of years ago with the Whisky Dev. And I suggested to Jay Chung, when he was over, that if he was interested in doing a bit of walking, that would be a good one. I'm very, very glad that recommendation worked out. Wonderful stuff. Greg's Whisky Guide is saying, I can share another story. I won a trip to Glenmorangie in 2002. There was an open bar at pre-dinner dram to select for their 3 brands, and I picked Backshelf Gem, a 1978 22-year-old Tane LH finish. A 1978 22-year-old. So that would have been bottled in 2000. Wonderful stuff. Roy Allison, my whiskey journey started bizarrely with a bottle of Hein cognac that a friend had acquired. I hope I'm pronounced that right. First dram I ordered was Lefroy 10 with 3 friends in a gastropub. Then I found Ardbeg 10. Wonder if you're still stuck in the peat cul-de-sac Scogsmart. It can be a tough thing to get out of. Phil is here, Phil and Deepa, Whiskey Mystery. The first time I drank Ribena without adding water. A foreshadowing of cask strength experience far in the future. Well, we all know that Phil and Deepa's whiskey journey, that Ardmore Legacy, wasn't it? I think it's the Legacy. How that fast-tracked them into the the whiskey exploration that they're doing and sharing through YouTube, mostly blind right now. I Saint-Tain, L'Hermitage, the Burgundy wine. Okay, Glenmorangie, of course. Fantastic. Well, I have one more to share with you, and that is somebody saying Glenfarclas 10, as it's already been mentioned tonight. A month after Roy and the Whisky Rev took me to the distillery for my 50th, I was sitting on the couch and sipping when I closed my eyes. The taste and the smell transported me back there in an instant. And that's from me and the Whisky Rev's friend, Roberto. He's just round the corner, Roberto Matteo. And we were with him, obviously, and he got to try a 1966 Glenfarclas while he was there. That was his birth year. He was celebrating his 50th in 2016 then, I guess. So on that note, I'm going to introduce you all to Graham. I'm going to introduce you to the Whisky Rev. I'm going to bring in that friend that has sat opposite me and watched me have those moments and close my eyes and have no words, which is a bizarre thing for me. I'm sure you can imagine, to have no words, but it's happened to me often enough. I'll bring in my friend Graham and say, welcome, my friend. Welcome to the vPub.
Thank you very much. How are you?
Oh, I hear you now. I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful. I'm great. It's good to see you. I know you've been on one before, but this is the first time you've been in on an official one, and I'm very happy to have you here. It's good to see your face. I was working out recently that the last time that we actually shared a dram together was October last year. How can it be that long ago?
Was it in Crieff? Talisker 8?
Oh, you've gone.
I think is my
yes, amongst other things.
Is my sound not good?
Your audio's, you're just out of sync. There is a bit of a delay. You want to try dropping out and coming back in again?
Aye.
That might be all that it is.
Give me a second, then I'll disappear.
Try that. I would like you to be able to hear. And if you can hear, I would like it to be able to I'd like it to be synchronized with the video, right? Okay, try this time.
Is that any better?
It's maybe a wee bit better. I'm not sure. Now you're going out live to your congregation every weekend now.
Yeah, and I got a new super duper microphone to do it as well, so it should be working.
It seems to be working better now. It's everybody's saying that he was clear this end, was working fine for us. Behave yourself, Roy. I had a huge delay. So it's my side. I apologize, my friend. Anyway, super to have you here. I think you can see when I've had this subject on my list of things to do for a vPub, maybe for a year, maybe longer, to talk about Epiphany Whiskies, to kind of flesh out what that moment of an epiphany is for me in whiskey. Yeah. And I never actually worked out if there would be anybody suitable to join me. And then I was packaging something up for you this week, and it suddenly hit me in an epiphany moment, perhaps, that it's obvious who it should be. Because despite all the epiphanies I've had with whiskies over the years, I would say the majority of them I'm fortunate to have been able to share sitting with you, usually around my breakfast bar, late into the evening, early hours of the morning, midweek, Whisky Wednesdays for 4 or 5 years. And I miss it. Do you miss it?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I just don't get through whiskey at the same pace anymore. And it's just not as much fun when you don't have somebody to chat to.
You can still enjoy a dram, right?
Absolutely.
But
they often take me back to occasions that we've had either at your house or somewhere else, Crieff for one or two of the distilleries or.
Absolutely. And there are some drams that I'll reach for and pour, and I can't not think about the time that I would have been sitting there drinking it with you. I think you know some of the whiskies that are going to come up in the conversation if we let it go down that direction.
Absolutely.
But there are some whiskies that, and I have to say I'm a wee bit annoyed because I've already confessed I would tend to buy more and you would buy cannier. Would that be right?
Yeah, well, I'll take credit for that. A lot of it was you could maybe put down to a bit of blind luck.
Well, no, I think you researched it. Whereas I was trying to say, okay, I would see a Tam the Villain. I'd say, right, I've never tried a Tam the Villain. I'm just going to buy that. It's cheap. And then I would see something else that was new and not expensive. I would buy that, and I would just go out for some milk, and I would come home with 3, 4, or 5 bottles of whiskey. And then you would turn up with one, and the one bottle was probably of the same value of the 5 that I'd bought. But you'd taken your time and you'd researched it and you decided that this was going to be the next step. So you're responsible for Old Pulteney 17, Old Pulteney 21. You're responsible for Optima. You're absolutely responsible for that Klein Leash. I'll let you tell the story about how we discovered that Klein Leash.
Well, I bought 2 bottles that day. The other one is actually here. So they're the Klein Leash. I don't know how much you've got left of it, but I've got a wee bit left. But the other one I bought was electric. 1996 vintage, a 19-year-old sherry cask. Can you see that? Probably
yes.
not that well.
Yes, right. I do. I remember it well. Yep.
And I brought them round and I hadn't opened them. And I remember the Klein Leash. I think it was £94, 94, £95. And you tasted it blind. And I remember you sitting there, and Roberto, who you mentioned already, Roberto was with us. Roberto and it won't surprise people to learn that I always took your opinion as being authoritative, even when we were fairly early on in our whiskey journey, right? People, you might be surprised at that, but see all the folk in the chat, they're not surprised at that. Uh-huh. So Roberto and I were sitting, and I was desperate for you to like this whiskey, and I hadn't tried it yet. And we had a nose, and Roberto and I were going, that's amazing. And I looked over at you, and you're sitting like that, right? Silent. And then you went, what is that? And when I told you what it was, you went silent again. And Roberto and I are sitting chatting away about it. And you'd ordered, I think you tried to order 2 bottles while you were sipping it. You could only get one, right?
Yep.
And then either the next day or the day after, you found 2 in Robertson's and Pitlochry whiskey shop.
No, it was Edredar Distillery.
Edredar Distillery, of course, Pitlochry.
Yeah.
And
I drove to Edredar to clear the shelf. I mean, it was, yeah.
The good luck that I got was, I think you bought 2 bottles that day. Would that be right? Or was it 3?
On that day, I only came back with 2. They only had 2.
And the one that I got was magic, and the one that you got, remember, it was corked.
It was corked, yeah.
And it was turnip, and it was just...
Yeah, it was awful. It was awful. And I remember taking it back up, and luckily it was Andrew Symington that was there that day, and he took the cork off, smelled it, and went, oh, it's corked straight away, no problem. Now, I could have equally, it could have been one of the bottles, honestly, that I had bought online. And he didn't even ask if I'd bought it there. He didn't ask if I'd bought it online. I just wanted his opinion on the bottle, and he swapped it out for me immediately. Unfortunately, it wasn't the cask 8687. It was another one that I got since long finished as well. But yeah, that's whiskey. I have 1 bottle of that left. I found another. I paid far too much for it. I admit I paid over the odds because of the nostalgia involved, but also because I knew it was such a good whiskey. But I'm going to pour a wee drop of this. This is actually cask 8688. Now, anybody tuning in would be thinking, what? I mean, how geeky do you have to be that you're tuning into the exact cask? But that's what's going to be involved if you're having single cask experiences, right?
Right, well, I should pour some of mine as well. I should say the reason that I trusted Signatory Vintage was because I had previously got a Mortlach. Do you remember that Mortlach?
Yes, I do. Was it not a gift to you from your wife?
It was a gift that was, how would you say, asked for. She went to the shop that she got it in.
Strongly hinted.
And my wife's quite small and walked into the whiskey shop, and she said she was basically kind of reasonably ignored. And then she went over to them and she went, I'm looking for Mortlach cask 6814 or whatever. And apparently it was like, sorry, yes, madam, can I? But that was I knew that it was a quality. Signity Vintage was a quality bottler.
I have to say I've had a lot of good experiences with them over the years. Mark Slinger is saying the Whisky Rev gave me a sample of Glenallachie, Speyside Festival 2019, and it started his obsession with Glenallachie. He's saying thank you. And Jimmy Legg is saying Aquavite spent some of that Italian money. What Italian money would that be, Jimmy? Spiritworks Tom is in pouring some of my cask 8673 right now. Wow, 8673. I've had 8672. That was a bottle I finished quite recently. We're fortunate that the guys at Signatory had a decent parcel of stock, right? But have you noticed the prices it's coming out at now?
Roughly, what we're at 250 for it.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's
somebody. It sounds as though it should be quite tenuous. That we're drinking from different casks, adjacent casks, and Spiritworks Tom is, but it sounds quite tenuous, but actually makes you feel really close to somebody, does it not?
Well, I mean, it's
weird how that works.
It's quite surprising to me how different the casks are. I think that if you poured 3 of these casks for me, the exact same year, 1995 Clynelish, roughly the same ABV, early 50s of that order. But for me, the cask 8687, I'm not suggesting it's the best, but it's that cask that did that thing to me. And you went on to love that whiskey as well. I mean, I'm not just imagining. You asked me to source you another bottle straight away as well.
Aye, it's magic. And it introduced us to, I remember we did a blind tasting at your house, I think, me, you, Roberto again. One of them was a Clynelish, and we were going through it, and we both went, oh, that's the Clynelish.
That's Clynelish.
It was just, I think it was just a 14, but whatever it was.
No, I remember which one it was. It was a 1999 Gordon and MacPhail Clynelish, again, one that you owned. Do you remember it?
I do remember it. I had forgotten about that one.
And it's actually in the video. It's in one of my first videos. The second, the blind tasting that I do, it's another thing that folks should probably understand is that all the blind tasting that I do and I share with the other channels and things like that, those blind challenges were conceived in my house with the Whisky Rev. He would come round and I would literally have a blind challenge set up and say, right, let's go, let's do this. And I would get my wife to pour the whiskies in advance so that although I knew what was getting poured and it was just a kind of semi-blind for me or a matchup, I was trying to participate in the blind as much as I could and trying to do it along with him. And you still ended up better than me at it, I have to say, more often than not. Alistair Gray has just checked 265 for a 1995 24-year-old cask 11229. Crazy prices. I wonder if we were part of the problem, my friend. But it is what it is. I mean, all whiskey is getting more expensive. Clynelish was always climbing. It's always been in demand. It was amazing that we could get it at reasonable money for a little while. Now it's starting to slip out of our hands, unfortunately. There are younger Clynelishes coming along that's still very affordable. I just picked up one recently. There's one over my shoulder here, an 8-year-old. I got a 19-year-old Thompson Brothers recently. It's okay. It's not the best, but it's still good. And it has a whiff of that Clynelish. Remember how we used to describe that Clynelishiness? And I know that we've come to understand it being much more of a kind of vanilla waxy thing. But do you remember that really sweet kind of barley sugar thing? And then
the big red lollipops that you used to get at the seaside. I don't know if they're ubiquitous, but certainly in the UK, you used to get these big red. They were dummies, weren't they?
They were dummies. They were in America. You would call it a comforter for a baby, but it was a huge confectionery thing. It was a big thing. Really, dentists must have loved them, right?
Tooth rotting.
Tooth rot things, and there were things but they had a very specific. It was like boiled candy, and they were red. And I guess it was some kind of fruit, and there probably would have been some kind of vanilla going on in there, but they had a very specific flavor, and. When you pointed it out, I mean, we could taste that in that Clynelish, and I've tasted it in many, many Clynelishes since. Tomato Yoshi is saying, have you seen the Daft Mill prices at auction recently? Over £1,000. Aye, I know. Some of them are going 4 and 5 times that, especially the ones that went recently for the charity auctions and things. I know. There's a few Daft Mill fans out there, Sevi being one of them, who's struggling because a lot of people want the Daft Mills to drink them. Gregor's saying, how's that recycled bottle count going on, Roy? You mentioned new bottles. There's surely a few old ones now too. There's so many that I'm emptying, Gregor, that'll never make it into a recycled review because they are single casks or they are things that people can't buy. It's difficult to review things that people can't really get their hands on and share, right? Michael is saying, I believe that Klein Leash often reminds me of Candy Shop, especially earlier in the bottle before the levels start dropping. So Michael gets probably a lot of that note as well. It is like a boiled confectionery, isn't it? Can you think of any other epiphanies? I've got a couple written down here, and I've kind of asterisked a couple because they're very specific to epiphanies that I've had with you. What would you say you recall over the years?
The earlier ones were probably fairly standard bottlings, and I've said before, I said in the chat once that I kind of wish I could forget everything I know and have tasted about whiskey, so I can have that experience again. The first whiskey I remember tasting was Lefroy 10 and Bowmore 12, and years ago I thought they were utterly vile. I really did. Couldn't work out why anybody would drink them for fun, and see now. And then Lagavulin 16 has to be, and I remember saying to you when you first described to me or tried to describe what you said, if I could describe how I feel when I have a Lagavulin 16, and the only framework that I could put that kind of comment onto was my experience with drug addicts. And I remember thinking that's the only similar thing I've ever heard people try and describe. And then bought a Lagavulin 16 on a whim, and it was an accident. It wasn't what I'd ordered, but it's what the guy brought. And I remember saying if I was ever told that I couldn't drink alcohol again, I would buy it just to put my nose in it.
Like Johnny Depp. So you were obviously drawn on your experience with back from when you were in the police, and you would have heard people speaking about their love for something that made them feel a certain way. But I mean, I hope, I don't know if the way I described it back then, I hope that I was describing something that made it obvious that it was about flavor rather than what the alcohol was doing, because I was very specific. I was speaking about Lagavulin 16 in the context of the other whiskies that, and I don't know, I would have had maybe only a couple of dozen bottles of whiskey back then, right? I would have just had a fairly, still a decent amount of whiskey, don't get me wrong, but a fairly modest collection. But I was speaking specifically about Lagavulin 16 back then in that fond way. So if we go back to about 2012, 2013, it's only kind of 4 years before that, I had first had that experience with that whiskey.
Yeah.
And I was still evangelizing about it to you back then.
Absolutely. And the first time I tasted it, we went together, and then afterwards I came round to your house and we did a flight. You'd set up a flight, and I don't remember what was in it other than there was a card doing it. And I remember what I said at the end of it was, I don't know if it's the whiskey, but these oatcakes taste amazing.
No, that's right. I remember that.
One of whiskey's superpowers is to make a really dull, boring food taste awesome. And the last one we tried was that. I don't know if you can still get that. The Leipzig, the original. Oh, no, it's too bright to see. Sorry. Can you see that?
I can make it out. Do you know what's funny? Is that we're probably going back to 2012, 2013, and as we mentioned, I've still got some of that left there in that very bottle.
That's the same bottle from.
Yep.
In fact, the cork is broken several times, but see it's actually a lot better than I remember. Now
I often used to say, if people want to understand what peat is in whiskey, to drink that, but don't drink it expecting a really good whiskey experience. I don't know if you can still get it. I'm not sure at all. I wouldn't think so. That was probably prior to their rebranding, which would have been just a couple of years before that. but I had that bottle there, and that was kind of, you bought that because you were trying to sate your craving for peat back then. That must have been a few months after.
I bought that in a whiskey shop in Peebles. The guy let me taste it. I got it home, opened it, and it didn't taste like I thought it tasted in the shop.
Jimmy Legg is saying now that whiskey is a beautiful colour. He's obviously commenting on just how pale it is. But that whiskey will also be ridiculously young as well. Greg is saying, I have a Lechic like that, but a 7-year-old, gorgeous.
It's very floral, isn't it?
Oh, you're making me want to go and grab it, but you good for you. Straight out of the bottle. Anybody that's trying to get my attention in the chat tonight is a hangout with Graham. Make sure you write or type Aquavite, and it should be highlighted for me in the YouTube chat. Anybody that's in the Facebook chat, it's going to be harder for me. But I tell you what I will do, I'll try and switch on these comments here as well, so that if there are any Facebook comments coming through, I might be able to grab those too. So can you remember any other whiskies then? Right,
Anox 16.
Aye.
And I was thinking, I reckon we got that out of Buxton's first edition of 101 Whiskies to Try Before You Die.
That could be true.
Definitely in there.
That could absolutely be true. And that would be back. I mean, he's revised and updated that book a couple of times over the years, I'm sure.
Yeah,
that was maybe
that one.
That was maybe is that the first one? Yeah.
The second one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that was and then I remember once being on holiday in Aviemore and trying a Longmorn 15 and raving about it and being instantly gutted to discover that it no longer existed.
Yeah.
And then we bought I think you bought both of them. I think you bought a 15 and a 16.
So what happened is that I called you from airport retail. I called you from the airport and I told you, I gave you a list, a couple of things that I'd spotted. And you said, or I think the way I remember it is you said, do they have any Longmorn? And they did. They had the Longmorn 16, the new one. And I said, they've got a Longmorn 16 here for 50 quid. And you went, oh, that's quite pricey. And I said, no, I'll get it. I'm curious about that. I'll get it. And I bought it and I brought it home. And we loved it so much, or let's say I loved it so much, that I was curious to get my hands on a 15, and I bought a 15 at auction. And we tried them back to back, and by this time I was absolutely in love with the 16. And I think you preferred the 15, if I remember, at that time.
Yeah, there was a hair's breadth in it, but I think I preferred the 15 back then.
Aye. So definitely Longmorn 16 was one of those that we... and I don't know how many bottles of that I've gone through over the years now. Occasionally I've paid far too much for it when it's hard to get. I've had one or two gifted to me, which is amazing. But every time I get my hands on a bottle, this happens to it. I opened this on a vPub very recently during lockdown, and I've only had a couple of 3 drams myself. But what happens is you just start to hit it and share it with as many people who kind of want to try and taste what it is that maybe you're enjoying. Are we going to have one of these?
Yeah, that's all I've got left of it.
What do you have left? A sample?
Yeah, it was from you ages ago, and I kept it so we could have it together sometime.
Excellent. Well, this is a perfect time. Jimmy, like you said, everyone prefers the 15-year-old. Not at all, Jimmy. Not if you've grown to have a love for this like I have.
There were some of these that I remember we were surprised at, and we wouldn't say they were magic, but they were. I would say they were epiphanies in terms of our whiskey education, right? And
I know what you're going to pull out. Is it a bright yellow package?
It is.
It is. The funny story of that is that we liked this so much, but because of a Drinks by the Dram sample, that we bought each other a bottle on the same birthday. Is that right?
That's right.
So, and we didn't know that we'd bought that for each other. And for any Americans watching, we paid 35, 40 quid for this thing. And I think it's like a $10, $15 bottle in the States.
But we bought the Drinks by the Dram almost with the expectation it would be a humorous tasting, because we looked at the branding We read a little bit about it. I thought that's going to be a wee bit naff. And then we both sipped it. Very much got Play-Doh from it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that was we've had that in other times since, but that was the first one I remember thinking it's like Play-Doh, you know, the child's toy.
Yep.
And being convicted, you know.
I think we did enjoy it as an educational thing, but you can see by how much liquid is in yours, there's a lot less in mine. But it's still the same original bottle from way back when. You can see that, you know, we're hardly tearing through it. But it's a good kind of, it's a good extreme, it's a good kind of bookend example of it. And I think, now that I think about it, I think it might be Buxton that's responsible for that one as well.
Aye, that was definitely. And my Instagram is a photograph of our drinks by the dram with the Buxton page open.
McAlpine and Rare is saying Anox 16-year-old is number 4 in the 101 whiskies to try before you die copy I have here. So that was probably where we got it from. So I mean, I guess when we talk about that torchlight, when we talk about that kind of guidance, it doesn't necessarily need to be somebody that's sitting across the table from you. I guess in so many respects, it can be somebody in a book, somebody that you're reading, somebody, I don't know, somebody you're watching, I suppose. It can be anything like that. Andrew Butler is saying that's my yellow in the Rainbow Song. Mellow corn. Yeah. And Drew from Arizona is saying, I can identify with the sadness of your favourite being discontinued. I bought 10 bottles of the QR 12 year. What would that be, QR 12 year, when I found out? QR?
Quinta Ruban.
Quinta Ruban, of course, yeah. But Quinta Ruban is a 14-year-old now, isn't it?
But maybe it was a 12-year-old and he didn't like the 14, and that's why he bought 10 bottles of the 12.
Simon Ray is saying he tried the mellow corn in a pub in Nottingham and it made my nose run worse than when I have hay fever. I mean, it's not that high ABV. It's 50%, isn't it? It's bottled in bond, I think.
Genuinely, I don't think I've ever looked at the bottle.
Yeah.
Yes, bottled in bond. You're absolutely right. 50. Yeah. See Roberto sitting there, sitting with the Glenfarclas, enjoying seeing you two together in the vPub, bringing back great memories. Are we allowed to tell any stories about what happened after Glenfarclas without naming the distillery that we then visited?
You are absolutely welcome. Go right ahead. Is Roberto watching from Facebook?
Is he? I'm not sure. But yeah, we went through Glenfarclas and we were shown around by Steve, who I got to know a wee bit when I was at Macallan.
The glider pilot, yep.
But we do you remember somebody had, the toilet was right next to the visitor centre and somebody had kind of caused a stench. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. I didn't know this is a story you were going to share.
But we then went to another very well-known distillery. We paid £7 for a tour at Glenfarclas. We then went to a very well-known distillery. We paid £50 for a much higher sort of tasting tour. And I'd said to Steve at Glenfarclas, like, it's his 50th birthday. Is there any chance you could give him something a wee bit special? And he came back with a dram of 50-year-old Glenfarclas. And then we were at this other distillery, and the girl there had given us several drams. And our good friend Roberto there took his arm, pushed them all away, and went, I don't like any of that.
I don't like any of these.
if you get anything 50 years old.
And we have to mention that Roberto, and that was his 50th birthday, and it was a trip away to kind of celebrate that and visit some distilleries. He was just getting into whiskey at the time. I have to say, he's got a nice wee cabinet all lit at home with his whiskey collection in there. He's loving his whiskey. During lockdown, I've meant to run round a few samples for him. You're in my mind, Roberto. I'll do that for you. But back then he was just getting into it and just getting his head around it and things. And I remember him. I just remember him being brutally, brutally honest. And we all felt the same way. We were having that kind of higher end experience, and it was a really nice, insightful tour. Yeah. But I remember just thinking that this is, compared to the way we were treated with the drams that we got at Glenfarclas, it's going to be hard for this kind of more corporate presence to keep up. But I didn't expect Roberto to be that brutally honest when he just swept them all towards said, sorry, I don't like any of these.
That was a whiskey moment that will never be forgotten, right?
Yes, absolutely. And now when we give Roberto something, we kind of have an anxious look out the corner of our eye. But normally he's much more kind and much more interested in whiskey generally. Phil and Deepa are saying we had a Deanston 12 Epiphany this week when we returned to a long open bottle that we thought was just okay originally, but now lovely honey and hay, deep and rounded, lovely. Welcome, Phil and Deepa, to the wonderful world of Deanston appreciation. Absolutely, Deanston is one of those whiskies that you do need to give a wee bit of time to open up. It's subtle as well as being that slightly higher ABV. It's not one of the hook whiskies that we've been talking about Epiphany-wise. It's not bold sherry or heavy smoke and peat. It's a bit more subtle. And I'm so glad that you've had it. I wonder if that was in a video, Phil. Tell me if it was in a video, because I'd love to go back and watch it. It'd be fantastic to see that. So I have to say, I'm missing you. I really am. I'm missing we had a walk through you heard Jay Chung's story about his walk to Balmaha from Milgai. Yeah, and he's got some Instagram posts of that day, and he messaged me on that day, and he said, Roy, this is amazing. I'm so glad I did this. And we were up there with the family. We did a little bit of that walk at the weekend there. And it was in my mind. It must have been the suggestion of you being my guest for this topic this week, as I was thinking about you as we walked that little section up past Mugdock, the castle ruins and things. And I was thinking about you and I walking that together. But I remember we kind of decided that we'd eat some lunch. We can't eat lunch at Glengoyne, so we'd need to take a packed lunch with us. But we'll stop into Glengoyne and spend a bit of time at Glengoyne, which is exactly what we did. We bought a couple of miniatures, and we bought a Glencairn glass each. Do you remember?
I wasn't sure I'm still not entirely sure if you're going to tell this story in its entirety.
No, I don't think I'm not going to tell anything controversial. There's nothing controversial in my mind. But I remember walking along the West Highland Way, and it's a very busy track. It's a very popular hiking route up the west of Scotland. And I remember just kind of people walking past us in the opposite direction and things. And we were literally walking along with a dram and a Glencairn. It was almost at the point of pinkies out, but not quite. And we just really enjoyed whiskey to help colour the landscape a wee bit on that hike. It was absolutely brilliant, and I miss it.
I've done the West Highland Way several times before I enjoyed whiskey, but I'd love to do it now that whiskey would be a part of it. Because remember, we met people going the other way, and we were there with our Glencairn.
That's right. And I think if we're going to do it together, it needs to be soon. I've not kept my walking fitness up, I have to say. Andrew Butler is saying he'd written off Deanston until he found out the Highland single malt at Sam Smith's pubs came from a mill on the River Teith. They had improved so much. Absolutely. Scott Clark is saying Aquaviti, give us the controversy. I'm not sure what controversy you're talking about, but I'm sure it's going to involve me in some form of inappropriateness. So
it wasn't bad. It's a moment in whiskey that I think brought our friendship slightly closer, as you handed me the glass and I took a drink and then realised that you had just gone into the bushes. I suddenly feel we're closer now than ever before.
It's a 40% plus ABV. It's fine. It's practically hand sanitizer. What are you worried about? I'd forgotten that. It's interesting that you remember it. If it was in the other direction, I'm sure I would remember it too. That's too funny. Desi's having a laugh at our expense. Wonderful stuff. I'm wondering, what do you think? If you think about the lockdown and think the fact that we're starting to come out of it a wee bit, and things like that are going to be on the horizon, we might manage a wee walk. See as long as I promise not to hand you a glass after I've freshly peed in the bushes, might we be able to arrange such a thing in the near future, you think?
I think the girls have been chatting on WhatsApp about a kind of hello. We have a reason that we might need to pop to Glasgow at some point in the next few weeks. But then once it lifts a little bit more, I mean, you could drive. The only big hill I think we ever did together would be Schiehallion, right? But the tiny hills are around about the halfway mark. Okay, for driving, we obviously couldn't be drinking whiskey, but
Schiehallion is pretty much halfway. I mean, that would be kind of cool. but it might be nice just to do a kind of let's get me back into shape by doing a flatter walk. No, I might be able to manage a hill again. That was great fun. Andrew Butler is asking, could you be a bubble? I'm not sure what you mean, Andrew. Clarify. And Luna's saying, at least you went into the bushes, Aquavite. Aye, thanks, Luna.
Is that not... But I'm grateful for that in retrospect.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Superb. I mean, but do you think, I mean, given I've talked about the fact that it's unlikely friendship, you know, for me to have, I didn't meet you because I was going to church or anything. I met you fully because our wives got chatting as the kids went to school, and then obviously we get chatting from that as well. I think actually you recall that my opening words to you is, "Hi, I hear you like whiskey," but I'm pretty sure that's not true.
Well, it was the second sentence. It began with, "Are you you're so and so's dad?" And I was like, "Yeah," and yes. I hear you like whiskey. We meant different things by that at the time, and it probably gave you a false impression. I had a couple of whiskies in my cupboard, and if I'm honest, it was more that I wanted to like whiskey. And I had an Aberlour 10, a Glenmorangie 10, and an Old Pulteney 12. And I occasionally have a drink of it in a glass of lemonade or something like that. And it was actually when I got a Lagavulin 16, I had ordered an Aberlour 10. But I'd inquired about Lagavulin 16, and that's what the guy brought up in mistake.
Fantastic. I have to say, I do take a significant chunk of responsibility for being your guiding light at certain points. I mean, I fully recognize that if we hadn't done all the exploration that we'd done together over those Whiskey Wednesdays over the years, I very much doubt that I'd be sitting here doing this right now. And in fact, I have to thank you directly, as I have in the past, for actively encouraging this very thing to take place. And I'm kind of glad that you did as well. But it was fully at Whiskey's feet that we became friends.
Yeah.
I think it was a wonderful thing to have to thank Whiskey for. Graham Fraser is suggesting that Ben Ledy would be a training hill.
Oh, Ben Ledy's awesome.
Is it a Monroe?
No, it's a Corbett.
Where is that?
Callendar. We could send the girls and the kids cycling from Callendar to Strathire, and we could veer off and go up Ben Ledy.
I'm actually thinking about an Aquavite hill walk.
That'd be cool.
Where everybody brings a hip flask, and there is actually a club that exists in Glasgow, a fantastic club called the Hip Flask Hiking Club. The Hip Flask Whiskey Hiking Club, and they're whiskey lovers, and they do a wee bit of hiking too. But I think
Bonaccord.
Sorry,
from the pot still to Bonaccord.
I know. No, genuinely they do other things too. They have meetups, and they're doing Zoom meetups and virtual meetups now. I'm a member. Unfortunately, because of all the other reasons, it's tough for me to get along to their things, even when it was normal times. But I think that because of the situation that we're in, the fact of getting together when we're outdoors could be a thing that's permissible in the nearer future. That would be fun. That would be a fun thing to do. It wouldn't need to be a big thing, but if people are around, it might be nice to go for a wee hill walk and take some drams along the way. It might end up involving a minibus. But it would be something cool to do. Helen's is saying that would be a great plan. Pierre is saying a Wee Dram Fife is organising whiskey hiking trips too. Wow.
You could start there, and then you could organise hiking weekends between distilleries. So up here, between here and Craigellachie, Aberlour, you get maybe 30 distilleries. You could hike between them quite easily. Just need a minibus with a driver who's not a whiskey guy.
If that happens one day, we can reflect on the fact that it was born here right now. That's amazing. There's lots of people in the chat really keen to do that. Multi-exclamation Matthew's in said, made it in time for the quiz evening, Roy, the Rev, and all the barflies. Good to see you, Matthew. I think you've met Matthew, have you? Mm-hmm. You've met quite a few guys in the chat.
Yeah, people came into Macallan, which was nice.
That's right. I would often send them there and encourage them to ask for you directly. I don't know if it was at my encouragement or it was just the fact that they got to know of you through the channel. And Gavin is saying, I'm up for that, get the bus from Edinburgh to Glasgow. I think it might be fun, Gavin. I think it'd be good to come up with something like that, although I'm slightly worried that I've made a rod for my own back and it's going to be difficult to arrange now. But I think if it became something we could do, I mean, it wouldn't need to be, it could be a relaxed thing. It could be a bit of fun. Talking about the quiz, am I able to keep you for the quiz tonight?
Yeah.
Okay, there was some hesitation there.
I always do appallingly bad because I don't, maybe this is terrible to admit, I don't watch a lot of whiskey YouTube channels at the minute. And there's usually whiskey YouTube questions.
Well, that's right. And I mean, if any of it, I have to say that the questions tonight have been contributed. They're Menno's multi-mission questions. And I want to say it's an easy quiz tonight and encourage everyone to stay, but I don't think it is. I don't think it's particularly easy. So if I'm saying that, it could be tricky. But then again, it might be something that we end up getting 10 out of 10s tonight, and it's much easier than my perception of it. But it'd be good to have you. You don't need to share your score. You're under the same as everybody else. It's just nice to have you in, and it's kind of nice to do this when it's been October since the last time we were able to get together for a dram. And I'm mindful of Roberto around the corner. I've got so much whiskey here that I know he would enjoy it, and I need to make a wee drive-by and care package drop for our friend Roberto around the corner. Okay, guys, I'm going to try and get the quiz because I'm way behind again, as per usual on these things. I do try to keep it to below 2 hours, and I feel miserably for anybody that's interested in staying for the quiz. I think it will be a wee bit challenging tonight, but the questions are cool. They're interesting. Be interesting to see how you get on with them and what you think of them. It's always multiple choice. It's always fully you're only playing yourself. There are no prizes, and the only challenge there is really you playing against yourself. Let's see if I can bring it in. So you're ready to have a go, my friend?
Yeah, I'm up for it.
And as I say, the questions tonight, the majority have been contributed by Menno. And if it's not verbatim his questions, I've taken his question as inspiration, or I've kind of modified it a little bit. But I think they're good questions. And I hope Menno doesn't mind any modifications I've made. Anybody that scores 10 out of 10 on the quiz is welcome to contribute future questions that I can consider using. Good luck, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. If you're leaving tonight, if you're not staying for the quiz, so many of you like to kind of just drift away, and that's okay. But if it's your first time and you're curious, stay and play along, because the questions are designed that even if you don't know the answers, they might pique a bit of curiosity. Maybe a question could bring you a bit of a whiskey epiphany. Question 1. The Speyside town of Rothes is famous for a few distilleries, but it is also the home of what? A. The Speyside Cooperage. B. Dallas Dew Distillery and Museum. Or C. Forsyth's the Still Makers. Luna Aaron is saying Menno signed off, coward. He's not a coward at all. I know that we're an hour ahead, so it's already way beyond midnight, heading towards 1 o'clock in the morning if you're in Europe. And I appreciate everybody that does stay, and I appreciate those that pick it up on the replay as well. If you do leave early, leave a wee thumbs up. Scott Clark is saying, I work for the correct answer. Good for you, Scott. Well done. So we're looking for you to get it alongside the rest of the chat. Absolutely. Everybody's getting this. Graham, tell us what it is.
It's Forsyth's, and they all get a free tour around Macallan. So I think I took probably about 90% of the employees around the distillery.
Excellent.
Quality workmanship, though. Really superb.
And Rothes from Macallan would only be, what, about 5 minutes?
Just along the road.
Yeah. Just a wee bit north. Fantastic. So if you answered C, give yourself a point. Question 2, active lowland distilleries in recent times dropped to a count of just 2. How many are active now? Now, when I found this wee factoid, I went away to try and discover who the two Lowland distilleries were. I'm sure they'd be talking about Auchentoshan and Glenkinchie, but I couldn't verify that. But apparently there were only two operating at one point in time in very recent decades. But how many Lowland distilleries are active now? A, 9, B, 15, or C, 21? I'm actually speaking about malt distilleries here. So, of course, there are grain distilleries in the Lowlands, but I'm speaking specifically, of course, about malt distilleries. Jimmy Legacy and Aquavitae, this is actually a good question. Take note. I hope, Jimmy, my friend Blair, I hope that you find a lot of these questions quite interesting. And a bit further on, Jimmy is saying it can't be 21, can it? Greg is saying, oh, a tough one. We start to think about it. There's a bunch. There's Lindors, there's Daft Mill, there's Eden Mill, there's Bladnoch, Auchentoshan, Glenkinchie, there's Ailsa Bay, there's Glasgow Distillery, there's Clydeside Distillery, there's more up in Fife I'm missing, not even thinking about. It's difficult.
I think I would go against the crowd and say 15. The crowd seemed to be going for 9, so I might be making a fool of myself there.
Well, some of the crowd think it's 15 like you. I don't think anyone's been brave enough to say 21, but I can tell you that the right answer is in fact 15. 15. Quite a thing. I wonder if I listed them. I feel like I listed them. Let's have a wee look. Yes, I did. Aberargie, Ailsa Bay, Annandale, Auchentoshan, Bladnoch, Borders, Clydesdale, Daft Mill, Eden Mill, Glasgow, Glenkinchie, Inchdairney, Kingsbarns, and Lindors Abbey. I have included Leven in there, which is a bit cheeky. 14 if you don't include Leven. The reason that Leven isn't there really to make or sell a product. Leven is an experimental distillery owned by Diageo. But they are still a malt distillery. So there you go. 15.
Quite a fan of Bladnoch, remember that one?
Sorry, yeah, Bladnoch, because that's been a bit of an epiphany whiskey for us over the years, right? And a nice, mature Bladnoch. Although one of them I'll remember, one of the best ones we ever tried was the Green Label 10-year-old at Keith's, wasn't it?
Absolutely, that's the one I've got in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely cracking whiskey. It was a sherry cask. Wonderful. But you have to bear in mind that would have been in glass for a long time as well. It's one of those ones, yeah. Anyway, I'm really enjoying this Longmorn tonight, my friend. Did you answer 15? So that's you 2 for 2?
Yes. 2 out of 10 might be the final result.
I doubt that. I really doubt that. Question 3. Which of these was one of the first to be owned by Pernod Ricard? As far back as 1974, it was A, Aberlour, B, Glenlivet, or C, Strathyla. 2 of these would have come in to the Pernod Ricard umbrella when they regained control, or I think it was originally they bought it with Diageo, Chivas, back in 2000, 2001. But one of them was the first. And if I can give you a clue, I would suggest that obviously being owned by a French owner since 1974, you're looking for something that is particularly popular in France.
Do you want my answer just now? Because again, I'm going to go against the crowd. I would have said Aberlour, but the crowd are kind of going for C.
Yeah, they almost wholesale think it's Strathyla, which obviously is one of the main components in Chivas Regal blends.
One of the most beautiful distilleries, just very picturesque, isn't it?
Probably one of the most photographed as well, I would say, because it's twin pagoda roofs and it's lovely rhinestone walls and things. But I can tell you that Strathyla, along with Glenlivet, didn't come under the Pernod Ricard ownership in 2000, 2001. But Aberlour was one of the original, if not the original distillery since 1974. Well done, Rev. Give yourself a point for that. A lot of the crowd will be wincing at that one. Question 4. The only official release from Benrinnes is a Flora and Fauna at what age statement? I think I might have asked this question myself in the past, but that's okay. These are from Menno tonight, obviously. But he's asking, what's the... You've got it in your hand.
That's that one, isn't
it? As you cover up the age statement, thank you very much. The only official release from Benrinnes is the Flora and Fauna. But interestingly, I was happy to include this because I would have to say I include this as an epiphany whiskey for me. I remember It was served to me by Erwin Trajkowski, who is one of the brand ambassadors for Diageo, tasting in a Good Spirits Company. And I think you were sat next to me that night as well.
He brought his dog. And
Yep.
I shout out the Good Spirits Company member because they didn't have enough. Everybody wanted it. And they honoured their agreement to sell it cheap, even though it was weeks later before it came in.
Typical for a Good Spirits Company. They honoured everybody's discount ticket until the next time they got it back in stock, which was amazing. Because they sold every bottle they had that night. We weren't able to get ours until some months later, which is very typical of Flora and Fauna, unfortunately. But is it A14, B15, or C16? Apologies for not putting the ABC up. Can you see that everybody's been answering? Oh dear. Roy, while you're chatting, we're playing the quiz. Thank you. And absolutely, you're going to kick this one out of the park. The Benrinnes from Flora and Fauna is definitely, absolutely a 15-year-old. Tell me what the 16-year-old Flora and Fauna is, Graham.
The Dalyun.
Dalyun, absolutely. Yep. Okay, I'm going to show you a photo now. I'm going to show you a picture. Now, this is more tricky for you and I think, Graham. This is not a Scotch whiskey distillery, of course. This is in Ireland. Are we looking at A, Middleton, B, Tullamore, or C, Cooley? Which distillery are we looking at here?
I've never seen that. I'll try and have a guess before the crowd give it away, and I'll just guess that it's B.
Okay.
But I have no idea. Very nice, though.
Jimmy Legg is saying if it's not B, we're a pack of weasels. No, you were being good. Absolutely. It was Benrinnes was 15-year-olds. It was B. But what is this? Jimmy Legg thinks that this is mean. Mikey Hayes in, good to have you, Mikey. And he's thinking it's Cooley. Some other folk, Erwin thinks it's B, the same as the Rev, thinks it's Tullamore. Spiritworks Tom thinks B.
I don't think B's getting the most, though, is it?
No, I think they're split. It's fairly widely and evenly split. And Alan Liu is saying, do they make Jameson here? I can tell you, no, they don't make Jameson there. So it's not. We're not looking at Middleton. We are. Graham is absolutely right. The Rev is spot on. We're looking at Tullamore. Is where they make Tullamore Dew.
I can take no credit for that. I'm hands up. That was a guess.
A pure guess. Cresimir is saying Aquavite. We are all over the place. Absolutely, my friend. And McAllen and Rare is shouting, B, 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 B. Shouting. Absolutely. Spot on. Question 6. In terms of output, which of these is the smallest? A. Speyside Distillery, of course. B. Royal Lochnagar. Or C. Glenturret. So A, I'm talking about Speyside Distillery itself, not Speyside region. But which of those three is the smallest?
Do you want my answer just now?
Do you know?
Well, my information might be out of date, but it's also, if I'm right, the most expensive malt in terms of how much the company pays to produce a litre. And that would, if I'm right, it's Glenturret. And I remember when at Macallan we were told something because it used to be under the Edrington brand, and Macallan cost something like £1.61 a litre to make, and Glenturret was up at £4.82 or something like that.
Oh wow!
It was because it was a small output. It was I worked out as a really expensive whiskey to make.
And it just shows you how little the cost of production bears has any bearing on the retail price. We can't just throw everything at the producers for that. Of course, it's a huge amount of taxes and duty and all sorts of such things. But there you go, straight from the horse's mouth. Absolutely, Glenturret is the smallest in terms of scale as well. Speyside, I think, is about 600,000 litres. Royal Lochnagar about 500,000, but Glenturret is down at 300,000 to 400,000 litres. And the smallest, good question from Menno, just to kind of illustrate how small some of the very well-known distilleries actually are. Question 7. Gino is suggesting that was a bit of a banana skin. Royal Lochnagar is Diageo's smallest, but not the smallest of these three. 7. Which distillery was founded in 1960? 64. Yes, founded in 1964, but boasts 1814 in marketing and labelling. So they talk about 1814. The bottles display 1814, but it was actually only founded in 1964. Was it A, Loch Lomond, B, Glenkeith, or C, Deanston? A, Loch Lomond, B, Glenkeith, or C, Deanston? Is this a banana skin for you, Rev? Would you be guessing this, or do you think you know?
No, I think I would be guessing.
I have to thank Menno for this, because this was something I knew, but it was a long forgotten and deeply buried fact. And I think it was a great question to bring it to the fore. It was
a clue, a reason why they would do that.
Yes, I can tell you why. I can explain why once we've established it.
It's
splitting the crowd a wee bit as well. Lots of people seem to think it's different things.
I think Loch Lomond is the most recent of those three distilleries, but I have no idea whether it was 1964.
Is that what you would guess?
Yeah, but it is a guess. If it's right, I'm not taking credit for it again.
Absolutely spot on. A for Loch Lomond. Anybody that answered A, which seems to be actually looking at it the majority of the knowledgeable crowd. But I picked up this bottle here that's been sat beside me since the last time I used it as a Speyside. And it says up here in Boston Glass, 1814. Now, there was a Loch Lomond distillery established in 1814, but it was 2 or 3 miles from the current site of Loch Lomond. It's interesting that they mentioned that, and I guess it's the exact same name. But the current Loch Lomond that we know has been making whiskey there since 1964 and no earlier. Interesting stuff. So you're doing quite well. 7 out of 7?
Yeah, I'm keeping track though. There's 2 guesses.
Question 8. Western Highland Distillery Nicknean, or previously Nicknean, just to move the apostrophe along, is curiously named after what? What is Nicknean named after? Is it A, a sleeping giant, B, a witch, C, a water kelpie? What do we think? Guesses count, says Steve Anderson, and he's absolutely right.
I know.
They're absolutely valid, because it's not just blind guessing, it's kind of educated guesswork and thinking about it.
I think a witch, but I don't know if I'm getting mixed up with the stills at Mortlach. They've got a wee witchy still.
They have got the wee witchy, yep.
Yeah, maybe more inclined to call it after a giant. I'm going to plump for a witch.
How's my poker face?
Rubbish. It's going to be A, isn't it?
Philip is saying he's thinking about buying a cask. It's B. And absolutely the vast majority think it's B. And of course, Nicknean is a famous witch from a local folklore. She apparently rallies the local rabble.
I need to work in my presentation here. I could have, if I'd done this right, I could have given the impression that I just knew all of these.
3 guesses so far, but educated guesses, like I say. Absolutely educated.
It's very kind of you.
Question 9. Kilbeggan Distillery in Ireland has which of the following? Back in Ireland again. I like to put in sometimes a couple of questions of world whiskies. It doesn't have to always be about Scotch. Kilbeggan has which? A still house in a former prison, B, a 180-year-old operating pot still, or C, the world's largest pot still. Kilbeggan in Ireland has one of those. It either has a still house in a former prison, B, 180-year-old operating pot still, or C, the world's largest pot still. Are you guessing, Graham? And I know that you're not following the chat, because the ones that you're guessing are the ones that tend to be splitting the chat tonight. So
no, I was reading about this in a whiskey journal earlier this week. Actually, it's a still house in a former prison.
Are you trying to lead the crowd?
No, and if it's right, I'm trying to just look more intelligent. They're not seen in Still Game when he says, "I was reading in a whiskey journal." That's that game. Yeah.
That's when they're touring Glengoyne. Aye, that's right. Unfortunately, it's not a still house in a former prison.
Yes, it is. You're wrong.
I demand that it is a 180-year-old operating pot still Kilbeggan Distillery in Ireland. Often claims to be the world's oldest distillery, founded in 1757.
Are you sure it's not in a pot still?
Sure it's not in an old prison.
I'm going to be lynched by the crowd.
Yeah, you get lynched. I don't think they were following you. I think they were making up their own mind. Don't worry about it. Unfortunately for them, they closed on their 200th anniversary in 1957, and it was to be another 50 years that they reopened on their 250th anniversary of 2007. But a relic from their original time is their pot still. Now, I imagine it's been patched up and repaired a huge amount of times over the years, but they literally have a pot still functioning at Kilbeggan that's 180 years old. Quite amazing.
These are good made-up answers and the wrong ones. That was a really good one.
Yeah, well, Jimmy Legg has been awful as well, saying it's easy to tell that Aquavitae didn't write this. It's ingenious. Well, what was contributed by my friend Menno and what was contributed by me remains a secret forevermore. But I'll thank Menno for his amazing and ingenious questions. Okay, Kresimir is raging at Menno. He said, thanks, Menno, 2 out of 9. Well, I'd have to say, you've been waiting on it. You've been waiting on the asshat question coming out. I want to see where the scores are before I show you the last question. How are we going? How are we doing with scores tonight? Joseph Van Name is saying 7 out of 9. Mark Slinger, 8 out of 9. Spiritworks Tom is on 8 as well. Kino Gott, good to see you in, my friend. Good to see you in. That's I think she often goes as Charlie. 4, Karen on 3, Jonathan Flower 7, Graham Young 7. I'm looking for the higher scores. Luna Aaron on 7. Lord Prefab, good to welcome you in, my friend. 1 out of 9 tonight. Fair play to you, and thank you for being brave and admitting that you've only got 1 out of 9. I think it is actually quite a tricky quiz tonight, despite Graham's amazing score. That's his first banana skin, actually, that one there. Spiritworks Tom, 8 out of 9. I'm looking for any 9 out of 9s. Oh, maybe not.
I'm still sure I remember being in Kilbeggan Distillery in a past life as a prisoner.
Maybe that's right. Maybe that's right. Maybe we just don't know. Maybe it wasn't recorded that it was a prison. Question 10. In recent years, Kavalan Distillery in Taiwan recently increased its capacity to A, more than the new Macallan, B, about the same as Campbelltown, or C, a little less than Dalmunach. Oh, this is when the hate, the vitriol is going to start spewing. So think about Kavalan Distillery in Taiwan and the scale of it. But it recently increased that scale. What size is it now? Is Kavalan in Taiwan more than the output of Macallan? Is it about the same as Vicky Thompson is throwing the asshat emojis? You're spot on, Vicky. About the same as Campbelltown, or is it C, a little less than Dalmunach? Dalmunach is a new distillery up there in Speyside.
It's definitely not A. Macallan's output is 15 million litres. And I think Kavalan is, if my memory is correct, they've got a huge tourist thing there, but they're only producing about 1.5 million litres. I don't even think it's quite as much as that. So my dilemma here is I don't know how much whiskey Campbelltown makes.
Well, you know what Macallan makes Campbelltown. I can tell you, if it helps anybody, I can tell you that Campbelltown makes between 2 and 2.5 million. Actually, probably less than that, because that's capacity I'm talking about. And Glengyle and Springbank certainly, and Glen Scotia too. None of them make their full theoretical capacity.
I'm using colours to the mast here, right? I think Kavalan makes 1.5 million litres, and on the basis of that, and I don't know how much Dalmunach makes, I'm going to go with C. I think Jimmy, like, how would you know what Macallan's output is? Macallan went up 10.2 million to 15 million when they opened their new distillery.
Cavallan's recent extension and recent additional stills and various upgrades throughout the distillery took them from, I believe, to around 5 million litres to 9 million litres, in excess of 9 million litres theoretical capacity. They're a pretty huge concern now, which incidentally is just a wee bit less than Dalmunach's 10 million litres. That's what I was looking up there, just to see what the capacity was. So the answer I was looking for, and I fully admit it was an asshat question, but the answer I was looking for was C. But a huge thanks to Menno for the as Jimmy Like put it, the ingenious questions. I loved them. I loved taking the quiz. And I have to be honest with you, I got a couple wrong myself, and I was guessing at others. So there's no shame in it at all. Pass mark would be a good score tonight. Loads of you are getting, Cresemere is saying, worst quiz ever. I've just made enemies of Cresemere, and maybe Menno has too. Stevie is saying, I see 4.5 million as of 2015. That's what I'm talking about, the recent doubling in capacity, the huge increase that they've had there. And Stevie is admitting, wow, yeah, 9 million now. Andrew Pears is in saying, 8 out of 10, my best yet. Welcome, Andrew. I think that's a new name. Fantastic score. Keener Dot is saying 4 out of 10 crap, didn't pass this time. I have to be honest, Shimony Charlie, it was a wee bit tricky tonight. It was a difficult one. Let's look at other scores. Mikey Hay, 3 out of 10. I'm sorry, buddy. You usually do much better than that. Budget Drams got a pass mark, 5 out of 10. Pete Head, 4 out of 9. Just as the chat. Drums Gixer Skipper Luke is on 7. I'm looking for high scores. Anybody making an 8 or 9 tonight? Gabriel Welding, my first fail. Please have a word with Menno. Hello, Menno. Can fully put the blame on me for any questions that I modified, and it's not about Menno. I want to take as much of the blame on my shoulders as possible. As Sid Martin said last week, do not contribute questions to the quiz. It's a trap. Yeah, people tend to take a bit of flack. I remember you used to contribute questions, and you got a reputation for contributing hard questions way back at the start of the
I know, but what's nice about it? So I get the impression now that if you have a hill walk, an Aqua Vitae hill walk, that Menno's going to get shoved off a cliff the first opportunity. It's like 20 went out and 19 came home.
Donna Pass Whiskey is saying, bring back Vin. I got 10 out of 10 with his quiz. And Jimmy Jazz is saying, glad I missed the quiz. Ass hats and banana skins just joined. Oh, well, watch the replay. Yeah, Jimmy, leave it in the comment section underneath. Leave us a wee note of how you did in the quiz. Fantastic, wonderful stuff. What time is it? It's oh dear, it's coming up for midnight here, which means it's 1 a.m. across Europe. Thank you so much for everybody for hanging out. I hope you found it interesting. I know it was a bit of a different take on a vPub and me just to be kind of reading out and sharing these stories with you. So instead of having guests on, it was kind of having you and your stories on your epiphanies. There's some things that I enjoy, and over the years, people have sent me these things, and they always kind of strike a chord with me, and I like sharing them. They especially strike a chord with me when I share them with other people, and I've been lucky enough to have Graham alongside me over the years to share a dram with. And it's been a pleasure, Graham, my friend, the Whisky Dev, having you in a vPub to hang out. And
the perfect accompaniment to great whiskey is not food, but great friends.
Yes, I would agree. Let's raise a glass to that, my friend. Thank you so much. Yeah. Cheers. And I'll say to everybody that's just in now, if they didn't catch at the start, that I'm just going to slip back to weekly slots. I say back to weekly slots. It's never been weekly slots, but that's what it's moving to. The vPub on a Sunday night. It'll just be an ad hoc occasional thing, and I'll use a Sunday night for patrons for patron-only lock-ins when I do those monthly. So I won't see you on Sunday night this week. I'm a wee bit sad about that. But I'll see patrons. I'll do a lock-in on Sunday night instead, and I'll kind of make a plan with them how they want to see things shape up going forward. Stewie Baby's saying, an easy quiz as always, thanks to the Rev 2. Vicky Thompson is saying, Slancher. Richie Z is saying, cheers, Roy, and cheers all. Philip is saying, night Aqua Vitae, night Whiskey Folk. Have a good one, and cheers to you soon. Graham Fraser, thanks.
10 out of 10 there, by the way.
He got a 10 out of 10.
Andrew Butler got 10 out of 10 in your quiz.
Oh, superb, Andrew. You did not, did he?
He did.
Fantastic. Andrew Butler, I have to say, comes across as a very, I got 10 out of 10. Menno is my hero. You're absolutely right. He's saying that. He comes across as a very canny, knowledgeable chap, actually. Andrew, it's great to have you about. And thanks for sharing your anecdotes. And thanks for participating in the quiz and killing it. 10 out of 10 is brilliant on that quiz. Jimmy Legg is saying, Menno does look small, but we love Menno, really, says Helen. Absolutely. We do love him. Gexel Skipper Luke has said, Greg's Whiskey Guide, 9 out of 10. Superb, Greg. You got a 9 out of 10 tonight. Absolutely fantastic, Greg. A great score. Graham Young is also saying that he saw Andrew Butler getting 10 out of 10. Listen, thanks to everybody. Thanks for joining me tonight. Thanks for indulging this kind of slightly different, but for me, quite an interesting topic. I hope you've enjoyed hanging out with the guy that I enjoyed hanging out with for so many years to enjoy my whiskey alongside. Nowadays, I rely so much on all of you, and I'm very, very lucky to have you too, because Graham's up in the Highlands now, so I've got to reach out to all of you. He's I'm using hundreds of folk out there in YouTube to replace what Graham left behind a couple of years ago. I think you did leave roughly as the year the channel started. I think was the year that you left.
July 17. We'll be back to Glasgow in a few years. We'll be back, quite sure.
Do you think so?
Aye, Glaswegians are rubbish living away from Glasgow.
It's like a bungee cord thing. It's like a snapback. Boomerang Glaswegians, absolutely.
Definitely.
And Andrew Butler admits, well, I have been dramming since 1977. Wow, that's amazing. That explains a lot of the depth of that knowledge. Gabriel Wilder is saying, thanks for another lovely vPub, and thanks to the Whisky Dev for being a great guest here. Absolutely. Listen, thank you to you all. You're all wonderful, amazing, beautiful barflies and generous whiskey folk. Jimmy Legg has just dropped me a dram at the last moment. Roy, I love you, man. Thanks, Rev. Thank you, Jimmy Legg. Thank you so much. I look forward to the day that you and I are able to raise a wee glass together, Jimmy. Sláinte, thank you. You're dearly loved, all of you. Thank you all for your continued support. Thank you for making these last few weeks of the lockdown so much better for me, giving me this fantastic outlet and whiskey time with all of you fantastic folk in the community. I look forward to welcoming you a week from now. Yes, until then, I'll see my patrons on Sunday night, and I look forward to hearing all from you in the comments, the way that we usually communicate in between times. Raise a glass and say thank you to everybody. Sláinte, until the next time. Cheers.